Good morning, good afternoon from Vienna. Thank you for joining our webinar. This is a panel discussion on advancing the green hydrogen economy, and it's organized within the 8th Global Review of Aid for Trade of WTO. My name is Petra Schwager, and I am the Chief of Climate and Technology Partnerships at UNIDO. And within our division, we also have the Global Green Hydrogen Program in Industry. Today's event is organized in cooperation with Germany. So we are very pleased also for this cooperation and thankful for the cooperation. I would like just to outline a bit what we are going to discuss today and ask all participants to mute themselves at the end of the set, or you can also in the session put your questions in the chat. We might also take questions directly from you after the panel discussion. What we are going to discuss today are the opportunities for industrial development created by green hydrogen. Is green hydrogen a game changer? And we also want to address in our discussions what are the structural elements of national and international energy trade. We also would like to look into what are the enabling policies and instruments that bring forward green hydrogen, international and local trade, and the effect on building up new industries in the countries where they are producing the hydrogen. So the panel panel members will share experience from a policy angle, but also from the World Bank, from policy angle. So we are very much looking forward to these discussions. Let me now just give you a quick introduction of the panel. So we have Mr. Jürgen Karl Zattler, who is the Director General for International Development Policy and United Nations 2030 Agenda, Social and Environmental Transfer at the German Federal Ministry for Economic Cooperation and Development. Mr. Zattler is a development and macroeconomist with more than 30 years of experience in international cooperation. He used to be the World Bank Group Executive Director representing Germany. He also held positions in the European Commission. Welcome. We welcome also Ms. Nangula Wanji. She is the CEO and chairperson of the Namibia Investment Promotion and Development Board, which is a public entity in the presidency, which is tasked with the promotion and facilitating of foreign and domestic investments, as well as the promotion and development of SMEs. And Nangula was named Businesswoman of the Year in 2011, so congratulations. We have also with us Hanan Mokhshid. She is the Executive Director for Sustainability and Green Industrial Development at OCP Group, which is Morocco's and it's also the global leader in phosphate production and fertilizer and Moroccan leader in fertilizer production. And in her role, she is balancing the company's mission to support farmers feed the world, but also deliver on the group's commitment to sustainability. Being an engineer and having worked with the OCP for some years, she brings in also this angle and sees how she can, with her team, contribute to the sustainability in the company. Amit Jain is a senior energy specialist at the World Bank. He's leading a 2 billion renewable portfolio in India, Bangladesh, and Maldives. And this includes Riva and Sharanka Solar Park, which are integrated by the PM Shri Narendra Modi. And this project has received the World Bank President Award for Innovation and Excellence, and also included in the Prime Minister's book, A Book of Innovation, New Beginners. Before joining the World Bank, he has worked in IRENA and the Clinton Foundation and the Asian Development Bank. Welcome. Last but not least, I have the pleasure to introduce Guy Lalonde. He is a senior economist with 15 years of experience in economic policy. He's the lead economist for industrial policy in the Science, Technology and Innovation Directorate of the OECD. Previous to this, he worked for the French Treasury and French National Statistical Institute. So ladies and gentlemen, you see we have a very prominent panel here, and I'm looking forward to exciting discussions, and I would like to give the floor to Jürgen to start with introduction remarks. Jürgen, the floor is yours.
Thanks a lot, Petra, and really it's such a pleasure for me to be here and to co-host this session together with you and with UNIDO. So also a warm welcome from my side. And I mean, I don't have to tell you, it's one of today's major challenges to secure energy access and at the same time to guarantee climate protection. And I think there is no doubt, there should be no doubt that Germany and also the entire European Union is ready to take on this challenge and has already indeed committed itself to achieve greenhouse gas neutrality by 2045. And this means that we need to replace fossil energy sources by alternative options. And it also means that we do not have a lot of time left. We know that 70 to 90% of the decarbonization in countries like Germany can be met by using renewable energies and also energy efficiency measures directly. But for the last part, for the rest, we need other solutions. And in particular, we need green hydrogen and also its derivatives to decarbonize particular hard to abate sectors, like, for example, steel, like chemicals, or also the aviation industry. But even when you look at heating in the urban areas, this will in many cases not be achieved by heat pumps and solar. So even there we might need some green hydrogen. So to meet this enormous demand, forthcoming demand for green hydrogen and PTX products in Germany and in other countries, we will have to rely on imports from other countries. And there it's very important that we take into account in what we are doing the perspective of our partner countries. And in this context, it is really of very great importance that our partners also benefit from new economic opportunities. So that's their perspective. And they should participate in a global transformation and make use of their often very, very substantial potential of renewable energy. Therefore, the starting international market ramp up for green hydrogen and PTX products holds three sets of potentials. The first one is we can take a considerable step forward, complete carbonization of local and international economies. So that's obvious. The second one, for producing partner countries, the establishment of large-scale green hydrogen value chains brings a new opportunity for sustainable energy security, for local value chain creation, for jobs, and also income generation, which can then lead to a boost in the development of local economies. So that's the local potential for economic development. And the third factor is, if this is well designed and implemented, not easy, our partner countries can benefit from a socio-ecological transformation and the energy systems and economy. I think that's something we are very much looking at. It's not to, as we called it, build back as it was. In many countries, you have an opportunity, you have a new kind of potential, and even, I mean, the word leapfrogging has been mentioned in this context. So it's more and more becoming obvious that that's a big opportunity for socio-ecological transformation and for economic development, in particular as the costs for these technologies go down. And that's why the German Federal Ministry for Economic Cooperation and Development, my ministry, works closely with partner countries. And I just want to mention Morocco, Tunisia, Brazil, or South Africa. Also Namibia, by the way, because there's a colleague from Namibia on the panel. And we are working to implement technical and financial measures in the green hydrogen and in the PTX sector. Just to give you a few examples, the German-Moroccan Hydrogen Alliance. This alliance aspires the mutual development of PTX and the hydrogen sector in Morocco by joint research and investment projects. And in collaboration with the Moroccan Energy Agency, we are in the process of building a reference GH2 production site, should be ready around 2025, with a capacity of 100 megawatt of electrolysis. The sale of the GH2 products shall be organized by a local operator. And then we have our program in South Africa, H2 South Africa, and also in Brazil. And they are supposed to flank and complement the building of capacities for the market ramp up in those two countries. But it's clear a fast market ramp up also needs the close cooperation of the private sector. The private sector has to drive it. And for this purpose, we, the ministry, founded the Business Alliance on Energy, among others, built the basis for the market ramp up for H2 Global. For this reason, Germany highly appreciates UNIDO's initiative on the creation of the Global Partnership for Hydrogen in Industry. It will certainly play a significant role in the integration of developing countries and the sustainable transition of local and global economies. We need long-term investments of the private sector into the market of green hydrogen while adjusting the regulatory framework and incentives and for the demand, for creating the demand for those sustainable products. So policy framework is important here, and I hope that you will not forget in your activities. From a development perspective, it is important to ensure that the operation of green PTX production plants is not at the expense of local energy supplies. That's very important. And similarly, green PTX refineries with their need for baseload electricity must not trigger incentives for further expansion of fossil power plants. It's very important to tackle those kind of waterbed effects. At the same time, conflicts related to land, water, and electricity usage must be prevented. Very, very challenging. And moreover, in addition to exports, hydrogen production capacity should also meet local demand and contribute to the local decarbonization. Not only exports, it's also about domestic markets. In this context, I would like to emphasize the need for uniform certification and sustainability criteria in the production of GH2. And of course, this is of particular relevance as we are talking here at the Global Review on Aid for Trade. A product certification that is internationally recognized and coherent is a major focus of Aid for Trade and should be. It shows once again the relevance of Aid for Trade. And perhaps in finalizing, I would like to say we, Germany, the German government, we are looking forward, really working with you, with UNIDO, and with the partners around the table. We want to jointly contribute to sustainable investment opportunities, the long-term development of our partner countries and economies, and towards the achievement of our climate goals. Thanks a lot.
Thank you very much, Jürgen. And I just would like also to thank your ministry for the support to our partnership. And we very much appreciate this cooperation. And our partnership, as you also mentioned, we need the private sector on board. So it is a public-private partnership where we bring the different stakeholders together, where green hydrogen projects are complex. We need many different stakeholders. And this is also one of the aims of the partnership that we are leading. You also touched upon some very important elements on standard and policies that we will discuss later on in the panel. So thank you very much for this excellent overview and the cooperation. Let me go now to Nangula and give you the first question. So how do you see what we also heard from Jürgen, the green hydrogen should not be just a commodity, it should also contribute and spur local industrial development. So where do you see the greatest opportunity for the green hydrogen applications and for spurring this local industrial development? Floor is yours. Floor is yours.
Thank you very much. It's great to be part of this panel. And yes, I think when you consider green hydrogen in Namibia, when the conversation started, we were really thinking about it as an export play. So it's like, it's green hydrogen. Yes, we are a market that is underdeveloped. We are a country that is not yet industrialized. And therefore, when you talk about green hydrogen, the first one is actually countries that need it, and they're talking about decarbonization and their decarbonization effort. And therefore, you're seeing how can we support that effort, and how can Namibia, of course, contribute to the global agenda as part of our own national determined contribution. But the more and more you listen to the conversation, the more you see, yes, Namibia will have two significant roles to play. One is, of course, addressing our own needs at home, and it's understanding the need of where we have always seen Africa as a continent where we are blessed with resources, and then we extract those resources, and then we export them somewhere else, and they do not necessarily benefit the country. So green hydrogen will benefit the country probably in maybe 3 or 4 ways. Number one is, how do we use green hydrogen itself and its in respective various forms and products locally? That is probably one thing that you can talk about. The other one is, how does Namibia benefit in the value chain of that? And then almost like, how do we use the capacity that is created by green hydrogen to support the economic growth? So if you look at green hydrogen itself, whether it is as a fuel or so forth, or many other forms like methanol, there is definitely a case to be had. We have got a mining industry, and if we are to decarbonize mining operations and so forth, then we need to talk about the likes of green hydrogen and how it can be used. One of our diversification journey in Namibia is about logistics, transport and logistics. And therefore, in mobility and transport and logistics, given our strategic geographic positioning, is also somewhere where we can use green hydrogen. However, of course, the quantities will not be significant, and therefore the export play will continue to be part of the play in Namibia, or part of our strategy in Namibia. But where we can also use green hydrogen is in the capacity that is built. We are saying, for example, we are a country then where the cost of doing business is sometimes seen as high. And that is the reason why we are not highly industrialized. And it is because our energy prices are relatively high. They are some of the highest in the region. Our water costs are high, and especially, why is water cost high? Namibia is a semi-arid to an arid country, but yes, kind of getting water from the ocean has always been challenged because the cost of desalination is high. But now we understand, when you are producing green hydrogen, probably the cost of desalination, one cannot say it's minute, but it's not the significant cost. And therefore, as you are building desalination plants for green hydrogen, then you will consider how can you build excess capacity so that you can get water resources that you need there for agriculture and that you need for various and other sectors, including the uranium sector and so forth. And then, of course, it comes to power. Power is very high. Currently, yes, our need for power is limited. We use about 600 to 800 megawatts, but we still import a lot of that from South Africa, while they say that our solar resources are some of the lowest in the world. So if we are to kind of produce power for the purpose of green hydrogen, then we need to work with our partners, with our our private sector to see how can we produce more capacity so that we can produce more electricity that we can use to industrialize the country. So that is really the various ways of saying that is the excess capacity that we can create. And then, of course, you come in and you look at the ammonia that you can then use for agriculture, because now all of a sudden you could have water and then you have got energy that you can also use to industrialize. And then we talk about how can we use it in our own industries, mining, transport, and logistics, before we are able to export. And then finally, of course, the value chain. We must make sure that whether it is solar panel, whether it's wind turbines, whether it is electrolysis, everything else that is used, we know that we will import certain items, but there has to be some that need to be produced locally. And we need to work with our various partners and the private sector to see how can Namibians be part of that equation and how can local private sector participate in the value chain created. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Nangula, for giving us this broad overview and also the vision of Namibia, how to take this step-by-step approach and find the right balance, because we all know prices are still high, so we need to bring the costs down, and how then also local industry can, or industrial development can benefit from this. So thank you very much for that. Let me now give the floor to Hanan with a similar question, and knowing that OECP is about to produce one of the largest green ammonia production in the African continent. So Hanan, how do you see this also contributing to industrial development? Where do you see the greatest opportunities for the application? Floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Petra. Hello, everyone. Would like to thank you first for organizing this event and having us with you. Very important discussion. Maybe a few words about my company. We are an international company based in Morocco and especially anchored in Africa, since we have a dedicated subsidiary to the African continent to support the African Revolution. We rely on a century as a major player in plant nutrition. It is the world leader in the phosphate industry, fertilizer industry as well. We employ more than 21,000 people, and we operate closely in 160 continents, 160 customers in the 5 continents. So we committed to be carbon neutral by 2040. Handling all our scopes, the indirect emission as well as the direct emissions. And one of the most challenging topics to get this commitment and this engagement is to switch to the green ammonia consumption, which needs green hydrogen on the top of green electricity. So if we want to enable green hydrogen revolution, we need to support the green technologies, green electricity production with the very efficient costs, and also all the technology and research and innovation behind. The green hydrogen production will definitely allow decarbonation on 3 major topics, if I can describe. The first one is providing green hydrogen and all the components that we can produce after green hydrogen as a raw material to some industries like ours. Today, we are one of the most important importers of green ammonia, of gray ammonia. Even if we don't produce it, we use ammonia to produce fertilizers. And decarbonizing ammonia, which needs to decarbonize hydrogen, will definitely decarbonize our raw materials. So hydrogen is first a raw material for many industries. And this is a very important topic, as important as considering green hydrogen as a vector of green energy transportation. So the green hydrogen allows the development of green ammonia, green methanol, and all the power to X value chain that can come after. Then the second major lever is the use of green hydrogen to decarbonize mobility. Today, taking OCP's case, we have lots of mining trucks that today use fossil fuels to displace phosphates in the mine, etc. And being carbon neutral means, let's say, replacing all the trucks and all the mobility within the mine that we have today with green means. This means a lot of electricity, electric conveying, maybe hydraulic transportation in the mine, etc., but it's not sufficient. We need also to switch our trucks today to consume green hydrogen or fuel cells, etc., instead of fossil fuels. So we are working on that. We already conducted studies to assess the opportunity. Now we are working on a pilot. We know that many companies around the world, especially the Australian mining companies, etc., and Chinese mining companies, are working on decarbonization of mobility, and definitely green hydrogen is an important vector to achieve this target. Then all the energy transportation. If we want to decarbonize the energy in the world, we need to use the places where we have maximum resources, wind resources and solar resources, and to produce hydrogen there, because we need to be cost effective, and then to allow the transportation of this energy around the world to the places that don't have this kind of resources. When we see the African continent, for example, and all the solar resources that are available there, we also have some places in the American continent when we have wind and solar. If we combine them, we need to have maximum efficiency and maximum coverage. This is why we need places with big solar resources, but also important wind resources. And only the combination of both can give us maximum efficiency and the opportunity to reduce costs to the maximum possible. So then producing green hydrogen will definitely happen in some places in the world, but we need to transport it and to make it available to the global community to help the decarbonization of the energy happen. And this is where we see the importance of setting frameworks and setting, let's say, research also on innovation, etc., on logistics, on transportation, because this is not scaled yet. We definitely know how to produce wind energy and solar energy. We definitely know how to produce green hydrogen through electrolysis and then all the components that can come after. But the integration of the whole system is still a challenge, the integration and the scale as well. So if you talk to, we just mentioned the reference project that the German ministry have today with some partners also in Morocco. We are also working on a pilot unit. We had some German, let's say, also partners like Fraunhofer, etc., helping us to set the components and the design of these pilot units, because we need to run the whole system and to work on the integration to reach the cost efficiency. For many years, green hydrogen have been a very important topic. Many companies and many actors around the world was committed to this solution, but the costs were not there yet. And the costs are still a challenge. So we need to scale it to make it happen with the maximum efficiency. Otherwise, we need much more incentives to make things happen, which is not a very valuable solution in the long term. So the integration of the whole system is a very important topic, and also having the capacity to produce technology with big scale and to make it available for all the users that today are potential is also a very important challenge for the humanity. Thank you, Petra.
Thank you very much. Very interesting points. Also, what you mentioned about replacing the import of gray hydrogen by green hydrogen, which will have an enormous impact on decarbonization. I think we see this in many African countries now, being one of the first steps where green hydrogen is applied, which is in the green ammonia production. It will have a major impact. Also, both of you touched upon the mining industry and the heavy transport. Very interesting, and building up the local capacities. So now that brings me also to the next question. Maybe I can start with you, Guy. So what strategic decisions are countries facing to benefit from green hydrogen in the context of local use and international trade? Floor is yours.
Thank you, Petra. Thank you for having me today. So to answer your question, I would like to stress three important strategic decisions that countries are facing. The first one is countries need to invest in R&D on green hydrogen now. In a recent paper we published with Antoine de Chéléprêtre and Émile Camerat, we showed that national hydrogen strategies tend to focus rather on the deployment of new and large electrolyzers rather than on direct support for innovation. And as a result, public research and development spending on hydrogen is now lower than in 2008. And of course, this focus of public support on the deployment stage seems to have important consequences for businesses as well. Patenting activity on hydrogen production technologies is growing at a very slow pace. But in the meantime, the number of hydrogen trademarks recently took off. It suggests that companies are focusing on the commercialization rather than on innovation, probably because they anticipate a rapidly growing hydrogen market pulled by government subsidies. But on top of the support to deployment, support to R&D on green hydrogen is required because important breakthroughs are still needed to bring down the cost of electrolyzers. For instance, in fields such as the architecture of stacks or in new technologies such as anion exchange membranes and others. The second strategic decision I would like to stress is that countries also need to invest massively in renewable energy production capacities to make green hydrogen both competitive and truly green. So I won't be long on this because it has already been mentioned by Dr. Sattler and Ms. Morshid and Wahanja. But here the two options are producing domestically the hydrogen in countries that are rich in renewable energy or importing green hydrogen from these countries. The third strategic decision I would like to stress is whether to consider blue hydrogen as an interim solution to facilitate the transition to green hydrogen or not. So on the one hand, blue hydrogen can be leveraged to decarbonize sooner the existing production of gray hydrogen, notably as a feedstock, but also to facilitate the emergence of a growing hydrogen market and the corresponding infrastructure. But blue hydrogen also has drawbacks. It suffers from several problems. It is not completely carbon neutral, as carbon capture rate remains below 100%. It may also crowd out green hydrogen or delay its deployment. And of course, carbon storage requires affordable and secure storage options. So I don't have a one-size-fits-all answer to this question of blue hydrogen, but the case for blue hydrogen is likely to depend on country and sectoral characteristics, which may have been affected recently by the recent geopolitical developments in Europe as well. let me stop there for this answer.
Thank you very much for giving us these three main considerations. And if you allow this green versus blue, when we presented the global partnership to our member states, we have 172 member states. This was debated very lively. The colors of hydrogen. This is also why we had a webinar last week on this, 2 weeks ago. From our side, we have taken the stand that in the technical cooperation, we will focus on green hydrogen exactly to spur up renewable energy production, because this is the technology that will spur up renewable energy production. But again, depends also on the country situation. Do the countries have gas or don't they have gas? So depends. Thank you very much for that. Yeah, I would like to give the floor now to Amit. Very excited to have you on board. We are also discussing at the moment with World Bank to strengthen our partnership in the area of green hydrogen. So may I ask you how you see this, these challenges that the countries are seeing, local use versus international trade? The floor is yours, Amit.
Thank you, Petra. And I will build upon what Mr. Guy said, that a country needs to decide which color they like: turquoise, blue, pink, green, and maybe much more coming as we go forward. We have just started the journey of green and many other colors of hydrogen. But to answer the question on countries, I'll spend a minute on what World Bank is doing. And as Petra mentioned, we are exploring partnership with UNIDO because UNIDO has done such an excellent work in this direction. So at World Bank, we have a green hydrogen support program, which is based on two pillars. One, the first pillar is financing. Of course, as World Bank, we are present in most of the developing countries, and we are in advanced discussion with 14 countries. And Namibia is one of them, and Morocco and India and Chile and Brazil. Various countries where we are in advanced discussion for financing green hydrogen or low hydrogen programs, which are not only focusing on electrolyzer or also on renewable energy, but both on demand and supply. I'll come back to that point later. The second pillar, again, where Petra and I are discussing, is on a green hydrogen partnership, which is mostly based on knowledge and policy and regulatory incentives required to promote green or low hydrogen. Now, what is happening is World Bank is very country focused, where, as Mr. Guy mentioned, the interventions required both on policy, regulatory and financing varies from country to country. You cannot have a single solution. And we have learned that from other programs on renewable energy or distribution reforms, which we have in several countries. So it has to be a country specific or at least a region specific program. Petra, under the Green Hydrogen Partnership and the financing program, we are working on several working groups, which will focus on specific issues. I'll go through one by one the issues very briefly. And this is based on our experience in two countries, Chile and India, and we are working in many other countries. First is regulatory. Now, if you have noticed, in developing countries, almost 70 to 80% of the green hydrogen projects are PPA based. And if I can give you exact numbers, 48% projects are PPA based and 36% are some sort of PPAs. So there has to be a bankable off-taker which can trade or export or import hydrogen to make the project bankable. So that is one thing World Bank will be concentrating is on development of bankable PPAs under the Green Hydrogen Partnership, which could be shared with countries to look at the regulatory issues. Now, as I mentioned, most of the times the discussions on green hydrogen gets hijacked by different colors, but mostly on production. What is usually gets ignored is on the supply side, where, as we know very well, hydrogen production, storage, compression, transportation via pipelines or via trucks, and then the use cases. Currently, most of the discussion is being done on the production side or on the use cases side, gray, blue, or whether being used in ammonia or refinery or from power to power, right? But little discussion or financing is happening on compression, on storage and pipelines. So that's another thing at World Bank we are actively discussing on development of hydrogen hubs, especially for ammonia, where not only for consumption, in-house consumption, but for export, we are producing a kind of a programmatic approach rather than a project by project approach where we could support end to end, right from production to the use cases for green hydrogen. Then we also need to, Petra, we also need to pick our battles, right? Because as you rightly mentioned, green hydrogen is a very complex technology. If you look at the decarbonization buckets, and I will go from least technology complex or the most technology complex, energy efficiency, then renewable energy, then electrification, and finally green hydrogen in terms of innovation, in terms of the technical know-how. So as we observed in the case of solar, wind, and battery storage, technology was more or less for solar existed and wind existed for several decades. We have made improvements in solar and wind, but not dramatic improvements in the last decade. The main improvements came in terms of economies of scale and financial engineering, which has resulted into the solar revolution. Unlike that, in green hydrogen, technological intervention innovation is required, whether it relates to electrolyzation or compression or storage or fuel cells. So from the whole value chain, a huge technical intervention is required if we are serious about making green hydrogen possible. Very briefly, again, we need to pick our battles. Green hydrogen has many use cases. Ammonia, in case of ammonia, refinery, where green hydrogen is treated as a feedstock, comes probably at the top. Then transportation in terms of fuel cells. Then comes power to power, where you use the renewable energy to produce hydrogen, and then you use hydrogen as a storage. Now we have to be mindful of the fact that in case of power to power, the efficiency of green hydrogen is only 40%, whereas the efficiency for storage is as high as 90%. Yeah, there is definitely a case of green hydrogen for a long distance, long duration energy storage. But when it comes to efficiency, there are some shortcomings on green hydrogen. So we have to be very mindful of the fact where green hydrogen makes sense today or next 5 years down the line, rather than in the next 10 years down the line. So let me stop here. And in these countries, 14 countries, Petra, we are working. We are currently doing pre-feasibility studies where we are taking policy, regulatory, and financing issues into account and developing roadmaps in these countries to help them scale up green hydrogen.
Excellent. Thank you so much, Amit, and also for touching this point about the lack of considering transportation and storage when we talk about the colors, because this can have a major impact on the life cycle, on really on the CO2 emissions that we are talking about, no? And if I understood you correctly, I just wanted to make sure that I understood correctly. So you're saying that bankable project that you are analyzing now need a combination, so countries need a combination between trade and local application. Did I understand this correctly?
Absolutely, Petra. Actually, a little bit more than that. So we are working on developing two frameworks. First framework we are building at a country level. Okay, we are analyzing 10 countries, how the policy, regulation, and trade in these countries is supporting or not supporting green hydrogen. The second framework we are applying right now is a project level, whether projects in these 10 countries are bankable or not bankable. I'll just give you one parameter. In case of renewables for solar and storage and wind, as you know, LCOE is very commonly used to determine whether the projects are financially viable or not. Similarly, in case of hydrogen, we are working now a detailed report on LCOH, least cost of producing hydrogen, which takes care of the complete value chain from production to the use cases, including the import and export.
Thank you very much for this clarification. And here I would like to come back also to Nangula. I mean, you have a long-standing also experience in audit, and I'm sure also on how developing these financing projects. So where do you see the consideration that Namibia has to take up now for green hydrogen, local use, and trade versus trade?
Thank you very much, Petra. I think, as I indicated later, for Namibia, definitely, probably most of our use for green hydrogen will be for trade exportation. And that is looking at the people that are approaching us. So we have gone out to the market, we have identified our strategy. Of course, we have mapped out Namibia and saying, where can we use green hydrogen in Namibia? And we have put that on the map. But looking at the local use, whether it is based on local demand and local market size, or whether it is focus of where we see the country going, our potential for generating green hydrogen is significant. So if you look at the resources that we have as Namibia, in terms of wind resources, in terms of solar resources, it's actually very significant. I think we're probably one of the top two countries where those resources are especially at one place, which means that the production of that one can happen at at the same spot. And therefore, that from a cost perspective, yes, still from a technology, we know that there's a lot happening and there's a cost that need to be considered. But from a production point of view, it will probably be one of the most cost productive or cost effective country, because our wind and solar resources are the same place, which means that the investor will be able to kind of generate, of course, not 24 hours a day, but maybe something close to that. Of course, the cost that will be more is about transportation, because if we are to go for trade, then the market, like let's say probably unlike Morocco, that is closer to Europe, and maybe there can just be a pipeline. Yes, Namibia, from an export side, we have got South Africa, who is like one of the most industrialized countries in the region. And currently there is Eskom there, which is the probably one of the greatest users and producers of gray hydrogen. And we know that South Africa is getting quite some level of support for them to also decarbonize their industries. And therefore, we will see Namibia playing a role there. So the role that Namibia will play in that respect is it's really a matter of saying, how do we take a pipeline to South Africa? That would be easy. Getting the hydrogen to Europe, getting the hydrogen to Japan, that will be the challenging one, because then you need to convert it to ammonia. And then they say that the use will be limited because ammonia industries are only available to a certain extent. And then after that, you kind of need to reconvert it in to green hydrogen. And that reconversion at this stage it's quite costly, and there's a lot of energy that is lost. So yes, I think Namibia would like to be part of that conversation of saying, when we are to transport for trade, how do we make sure that the efficiency, the cost of reconverting to energy, we are part of that research, while at the same time making sure that we still use local. So yes, local use is there, but it will probably be a matter of 80% export, 20% local, and therefore we will want to be part of the studies and researches of bringing efficiency, especially in the transportation. And how can you transport green hydrogen almost like in its form without converting ammonia? I understand it's still a subject matter of study and research, definitely a research that we'd like to be part of.
Thank you very much, Nangola. I was just informed that Hanan has a few technical issues. I just wanted to share that we are now working with Morocco on the local use of green hydrogen. And I think there is a big will also from the government to pick investments that add the biggest value added to the country, and to using it locally and to building up new jobs, and also to building up the supply chain. Thank you. I would like to come back to you, Guy, and maybe we could touch upon some of the constraints, but also the opportunities related to trade and policy that hinder or enable the development of local usages, and also the participation in the global hydrogen market. How do you see this? Floor is yours.
Thanks, Petra. So I already mentioned in my first intervention some relevant policies, like support to research and development and renewable electricity production. Let me mention another policy objective of paramount importance here, I think it is to reduce the uncertainty for investors and businesses regarding the green hydrogen market. And this can be achieved through two complementary actions. First, by establishing clear carbon price trajectories, because adequate carbon pricing would make green hydrogen more competitive, would contribute to a cost-efficient decarbonization of industry, but could also provide revenue, for instance, to finance research and development support to green hydrogen. So we all know carbon taxes, emission trading schemes, and such kind of instruments. But I think another interesting policy is the carbon contracts for difference, in short CCFD, which Germany is currently experimenting. It consists in forward contracts with the government on the price of abated greenhouse gases. And if the outcome of the German experiment is positive, it could become a powerful additional tool to decrease uncertainty for investors in green hydrogen. The second lever, I think, is also that uncertainty can be reduced through regulatory action, and strong government initiatives are needed to signal the potential role of green hydrogen. Let me mention three actions in this respect. The first one is infrastructure investments, which are often a prerequisite for the local adoption and international trade of hydrogen. Governments should start planning the hydrogen infrastructure now by evaluating the needs, in particular related to transport, by identifying the appropriate economic model for this infrastructure, and also by coordinating the public and the private sectors. Of course, hydrogen can be produced directly on industrial sites, but as we have seen today, economies of scale and the localization of renewable energy resources can also make it more profitable to produce hydrogen in large installations and then distribute it to the different users. In this respect, another important action that was already mentioned by Dr. Zattler is the harmonization of regulatory standards across countries, for instance, on the guarantees of origin, on hydrogen purity, on equipment specifications, on the blending into the gas grid, for instance, and many other standards. And finally, let me also mention that I think long-term objectives are also very important. By long-term, I mean, for instance, until 2050. Such objectives are needed to provide certainty to investors. A number of countries have already published national hydrogen strategies, but most of them contain only targets at the 2030 horizon. Of course, there are already a significant improvement with respect to today's green hydrogen production, these targets, but they are still far from the necessary production at the 2050 horizon. And that's the horizon that matters for long-term investors. Thank you.
Thank you very much. We just to add on, we are also looking in UNIDO how to align green hydrogen strategies with industrial development strategies, because this will be a major, it will be key also in defining local use versus trade, for example, steel production. So thank you for that. Yeah, I would like to give the same question actually to Amit. What do you see as constraints, trade-related and policy-related constraints? Floor is yours.
Thanks, Petra. So first of all, I think the countries are not able to grasp the whole value chain of green hydrogen. They are tackling production, supply, transportation, everything separately. And as this discussion today is bringing out the trade issues very, very clearly. As you know, in countries, they have different ministries who deal with chemicals or who deal with commerce separately, right? In case of green hydrogen, because everything is so much interconnected, there is a need for policy intervention from different ministries in a country. So that's the challenge we are facing when we are, for example, our nodal ministry is energy, but when we talk about export or trade, we need to talk to the commerce industry. So that's difficulty I think we will have to overcome if we need to bring out a comprehensive policy in these countries. The second issue I think is, for example, in case of India, they are coming out with a very innovative policy. Is called performance linked incentive to encourage local manufacturing. India is encouraging that if you manufacture in India, they will give X amount of dollars for manufacturing. So I think that is something we also are learning, that local production is very important if you want to encourage the local consumption and export of green hydrogen, and incentives like the PLI scheme are very important. So these are some of the issues, Petra, I think, but also we are at a very early stage where the dissemination from one country to another country is very important. That's another reason we should be talking and having discussion like this.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for these insights. And yeah, and also always considering what you said at the beginning, green hydrogen is still a very good. Where do we apply it best that we have the effect that we want to achieve? Of course, yeah. Thank you for that. I hear that Hanan is back. So Hanan, may I also ask you to come in again to see, also elaborate a bit more on this, where you see where's Morocco standing? We just had the mission to Morocco, 2 missions to Morocco, very good interventions with your ministries on the intention to get the best deal from the investments offered to the country. So the floor is yours.
Thank you, Petra, and sorry for the technical issue. I was disconnected. So definitely Morocco is trying to take the lead on this subject, relying on its competitive advantages. The first advantage is all the track record that my country have in terms of energy, green energy, especially solar energy, wind energy as well, etc. Our commitment to reach about 50% of our energy coming from green energy before 2030. So, and this is definitely important because the cost of energy is a big enabler for green hydrogen production. Then there are lots of initiatives starting from the project reference that have been mentioned, but also the 2 pilot plants that my company is building today. We just signed 2 days ago with a constructor, Proton Venture, that will help us to have the first pilot unit on our industrial site, Joflasfar. This platform will be testing different technologies of electrolysis. The big debate between PEM technology, alkaline technology, which one is the better, which one is most adapted to green, to the intermittency and all the technical discussion behind. So this platform will be a testing platform for technologies, but also will be a first step toward green ammonia and then green methanol and all the power to X development. This platform is handled with through our university, the University Mohammed VI Polytechnic, that is conducting a big research roadmap for OCP to produce green hydrogen and derivatives. A second pilot unit, the first one is about 4 megawatts capacity at the moment and will be expanded. The second under study as well is the 10 megawatt platform that will be also a testing platform. We have also a national roadmap. All these technical developments and trials are very important before scaling up the solutions in terms of to achieve the efficiency that we were mentioning. And then an important topic also is all the frameworks that we need to put this in place. So we've been talking about incentivizing the solution. Also, we can imagine some frameworks giving premium prices to green fertilizers, green hydrogen, and all this stuff to make the idea becoming reality before being adopted with all the big players in the field. I think there are also discussions to have on logistics today, all the piping, the injection of green hydrogen in existing infrastructures, blending with gas, etc., need international frameworks, need global frameworks. It's not a local discussion, actually. All the discussion around defining green hydrogen, what it is green hydrogen. Our friends from the panel were mentioning different parameters, like what is the purity of green hydrogen, what are the, let's say, the technical solutions that we need to have, and we must define all this. This is very important because today green hydrogen is not defined yet at a global level. So green hydrogen can be fully decarbonated. Maybe we can also consider a minimum of CO2 to have a large definition and give maximum opportunities to this production. So we need global frameworks to define, to set policies on trade, on distribution, on logistics, on all the exchange that we should impulse between different continents and different countries. So we have the technology and research that could be done at a local level, but definitely the legal frameworks and trade frameworks, etc., that will impulse the solution should be global. This is very important. Thank you, Petra.
Thank you very much, Hanan. And with this, we are coming to the end. We have overdrawn already 3 minutes, so I have to close quickly. But what I have learned is it's a global affair, but we need to think also locally. We need also to act locally. For trade, we are looking into policy standards, but also still technical issues which affect the costs. So we know the technical solutions are there, but it will increase the cost. So then also it's still a rare good. If the overall aim is the decarbonization, but it's of course also the energy supply, where do we put green hydrogen in this? And also following what Amit said, the structure, energy efficiency, renewable energy, electrification, and then green hydrogen. So always keeping this in mind, where do we have the biggest efficiency? And then also for investing, for financing, how can we encourage, how can we de-risk investments and having this combination of trade and local use. Yeah, thank you so much. I learned a lot. This is also the aim of our global partnership, to bring different views together and to see that we move this forward and to accelerate it. To accelerate the green hydrogen economy. So thank you once again. I wish you a nice day, afternoon, evening, and thank you also to listening in. Thank you so much. Bye-bye.